Okay, the recording has started. It is now 1:01 p.m. and I would like to call to order this meeting of the WIFA Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee. Ms. Mendoza, please call the roll.
Yes. David Beckham.
Present virtually.
Thank you. Buchanan Davis. Pete Kim.
Here.
Thank you. Richard Lent.
Present.
Sue Montgomery. Here. Thank you. Tim Tumyor.
Here virtually.
Thank you. And Ted Cook.
Here.
Chairman quorum is confirmed.
Thank you. For the record, please remember to identify yourself when making a motion or requesting to speak and ensure that you are unmuted for any votes. In addition, if any member wishes to depart the meeting at any time, please announce your departure for our recorded meeting records. And I know we'll have at least a couple committee members coming and going today. Moving to agenda item number 2, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Has WIFA staff received any disclosures?
Good afternoon, Joe Satelli, General Counsel. No disclosures have been submitted for today's meeting.
Thank you. If any member would like to identify and disclose a conflict for any item on today's agenda, you may do so at this time. Are there any? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 3. I will pass it over to WIFA's Director, Chuck Podolak, to lead the discussion.
Thanks, Ed. I'm excited to finally be here. Looking forward to November 20th. Excited we're still on pace. I think towards the end of agenda item number 4, after you guys have had time to consider, I'll have Chelsea provide a going forward update on some of the outreach that's going on. But other than that, that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move to our regular agenda items. Members of the public wishing to speak on a specific item on the regular agenda may request to speak prior to the chairman opening the discussion on each item. For instructions on how to submit a speaker's card, please refer to the notes on proceedings at the end of the meeting agenda. Public comments are intended to address and inform the committee, but are not an opportunity for a question and answer session. Committee members should also keep in mind the discussions we've previously had regarding public statements about the contents of the solicitation during the drafting phase. As a reminder to the public, confidentiality during the drafting of this solicitation is essential to the integrity of the overall procurement process and is necessary to foster a fair and competitive procurement process. Agenda item number 4, long-term water augmentation solicitation development, solicitation and supporting documents. As Director Podolak just said, we have now reached the point where the committee has gone through each portion of the solicitation multiple times, the whole solicitation, the supporting documents a couple of times, and we're ready one more time to go through the entire document, including the supporting documents during this agenda item number 4, as we are preparing to make a recommendation to the board at this meeting. Joe Satelli will lead the discussion.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. Today, staff's provided a final draft of the solicitation and supporting documents for the committee's review. The committee has previously performed a review of the entire draft at your October 2nd meeting, and staff had individual follow-up with each of you since then. The draft in front of you today reflects all of the inputs we have received from the committee throughout the entire process. And today, staff is asking the committee to vote to recommend approval of the solicitation to the WIFA Board of Directors. While the committee could move directly to a vote, I would suggest a discussion in advance. And therefore, in order for the committee to more fully discuss the matters and as part of the confidential solicitation drafting process, I would recommend the committee enter into executive session under ARS 38-431.03A2 to discuss confidential information, and under ARS 38-431.03A3 to receive legal advice concerning the same. Before entering executive session, should the committee wish to do so, I do believe it'd be prudent for our outside counsel, Ryan with Snell and Wilmer, to offer a few comments on the confidentiality and next steps moving forward.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Ryan with Snell Wilmer. We understand that there has been an inquiry regarding the use of executive sessions during the development of the long-term water augmentation solicitation. We'd like to remind everyone that state law controls the confidentiality of procurements undertaken in the state of Arizona. Arizona law provides for confidentiality in the solicitation's development and evaluation phase to ensure integrity of the procurement, that all offers receive impartial, fair, and equitable treatment, that there are no conflicts of interest or appearances of conflicts of interest, and that there is no potential for direct or indirect lobbying efforts to skew the solicitation towards specific offers. As such, WIFA should have no public discussion relating to the development of the solicitation's criteria, requirements, terms, or conditions until the solicitation is publicly approved and published. If confidentiality is not maintained during the solicitation's developmental stage, it can result in permanent disqualification of a potential proposer, cancellation of the entire solicitation, and delay of the solicitation or contract implementation. Furthermore, Arizona's open meeting law exceptions provided within ARS section 38-431.03A apply here. WIFA is authorized to enter executive session to discuss the solicitation's development relating to confidential records, legal advice, and contract negotiations. Once the solicitation is developed, it will be approved in an open meeting and publicly published. WIFA reserves the right to amend the solicitation after its publication based on feedback received. Comments made in executive session will become public once the awards have been made. As for discussion today in executive session, we'd like to remind the board that all votes must take place in public session. Any legal action involving a final vote or decision may not take place in executive session except in circumstances that do not apply in this context. This means that the board may not take any kind of informal, anonymous vote ahead of the formal vote in the public session. Taking a straw poll or informal or preliminary vote in executive session is unlawful under the open meeting law. Public bodies may not take final legal action, make a decision, or reach a collective decision, commitment, or promise in executive session. That means you may advocate for your position in executive session, but all votes must be done in public session. To the extent you vote for or against the solicitation and you like comments in this open meeting, we recommend you state, I'm voting against the solicitation for reasons stated in executive session. As stated earlier, these comments will become public once the awards have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? Seeing none, do we have any requests for public comment on this item?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion amongst the committee? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Based on the advice of staff, I'd entertain a motion to enter into executive session for agenda item 4 pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, section 38-431.03A2 to discuss confidential information and pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3 to receive legal advice. Do we have such a motion?
Mr. Chair, Richard Lunt, I would so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Sue Montgomery would second that.
Is there any committee member discussion on the motion? Okay, with no further discussion, we will call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? The motion passes. For the record, I'd note that the following individuals are invited to join the committee in the executive session. Yolanda Mendoza, for purposes of providing administrative support and note-taking. General Counsel Joseph Telly, outside counsels Ryan Regula from Snell and Wilmer, and Liz Cousins from Nossaman to provide legal support. Director Podolak, Assistant Director of Finance Denise Olson, Procurement Officer Brenda Prevost, Water Resources Advisor John Riggins, and Jason Fort from HDR as technical advisors and consultants. We will now be entering into executive session. It is now 1:36 p.m. I would like to call to order this meeting of the long-term with the long-term water augmentation committee. Ms. Mendoza, please call the roll.
Yes. David Beckham,
Present.
thank you. Buchanan Davis is absent. Pete Kim is absent. Richard Lunt,
Present.
Sue Montgomery. Thank you. Tim Tamur,
Here.
thank you. And Ted Cook.
Here.
Chairman quorum is confirmed.
Thank you. In our final executive session, I believe, in preparing this solicitation for a recommendation for our board, we had a few updates, as we always do, from the staff of things that have been accomplished since our last meeting. And we have come out of executive session, I believe, ready to take a motion and a vote on a recommendation to the board. I would like Mr. Satelli, please, to outline the form of a motion that's appropriate.
Thank you, Chairman Cook. I'd also note in executive session, Pete Kim departed the meeting at 1:30 p.m. He may join us later, but for the record, that was the time that he departed. We also had Vanessa Pomeroy from Snell and Wilmer joining us also to provide legal advice in that executive session. As for the form of motion today, as agendized, the possibility of action on approving the solicitation and supporting documents to the board. A potential motion the committee could entertain today would be a recommendation of an approval or a disapproval of the solicitation to the board, consistent with the instructions provided in executive session. So the form of motion to approve would be recommend approval of the solicitation to the board. Again, consistent with the instructions provided in executive session. A disapproval would be recommending disapproval, consistent with that form.
May we have a motion regarding a recommendation to the board for the solicitation as discussed in executive session?
Mr. Chairman, Richard Lund, I move that for a recommendation for approval of the items discussed in executive session.
Verify approval of the solicitation consistent with the instructions provided in executive session.
Approval of the solicitation consistent with the instructions that were given in executive session. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is David Beckham. I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any committee member discussion on the motion? Seeing, yes, somebody raising their hand. I don't see a hand raised. Sue, please.
Sorry, I tried to raise my hand. So are you gonna call for a vote, or how are you gonna do this, Chairman? I'm sorry.
That's what I was about to do.
Thank you.
We have a motion, we have a second. So we have no request for discussion, so we will call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I would like to explain my vote, Mr. Chairman, when it's appropriate.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I wanted to say is that, first, the staff, I'm sure every one of us would say the staff should be commended for all the work they did on this solicitation. It was a tremendous amount of work, and it's greatly appreciated. I know not just by me, but by everybody on the board. But I do want to say that my vote in favor of advancing the solicitation, I don't want it construed as being in favor of anything else as we move through this process. We're going to have additional processes in phase 2 and phase 3. And, during those processes, we're going to analyze where we're at and have participation as appropriate. So I just wanted to clarify that this is certainly a vote in favor of the solicitation and having it moving forward. But it is not intended to transmit any position on any other phase as we move through the process.
Thank you. Are there any committee members opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. I would like to add my comments to Susan Montgomery's comments about the incredible work that has been done by the staff over this, certainly the 4+ months that the committee has been meeting, and also the high quality and very responsive work from our technical and legal consultants during that time. But also the committee volunteers, both with your many meetings that we've had to attend, lots and lots of stuff to read and respond to. Also, great questions that have been brought up over the course of this whole process. And also making yourselves available for one-on-one meetings recently, as we've been so able to be so thorough, and the only way that we've been able to be so thorough to match the content and quality of the work that's been done by the staff and the consultants is have the committee pay attention to it and do a similar level of effort from their perspective as committee members to make sure that this was use the word again, a high quality and robust decision and recommendation that we're taking to our board. This is such an important step in many more steps that we have to take to actually get a water augmentation project in place. And it's called a first step for a reason. There's first steps in a lot of things, but the first step is always important for where any endeavor ultimately goes. So thank you for that. We'd like to, this is a part of agenda item number 3, the director's report. We'd like to come back and ask Chelsea McGuire to outline some of the efforts that have just started while maintaining the confidentiality of the solicitation, which has to endure until the board considers whether or not to approve it. But we have started, I'll call it pre-publicity on the fact that we expect the solicitation is likely to come out the day after the board meeting on November 20th, if the board chooses to approve this. So please, Chelsea, will you give us an update on that?
Happy to, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. As Mr. Chairman mentioned, the idea of this publication and pre-publication, kind of spotlighting on the solicitation is definitely not meant to do anything that damages the confidentiality, but we also understand that industry is very interested in this process and that we don't want anyone to be caught off guard or be surprised by the drop of the solicitation if the board chooses to do so or chooses to publish it in November. So we have been taking some very strategic steps to make sure that everyone who needs to know that the solicitation is about to come online does know that the solicitation is about to come online. We started with local media, talking to the water community here, as we've been doing pretty consistently really since the beginning of this process. But we've also expanded that communication into some markets that may not have been our traditional markets, including kind of the finance and the infrastructure side of things. So just recently, last week, Chairman Cook and I were able to attend a meeting of the Association for the Improvement of American Infrastructure, AIAI, in New York. That was a pretty diverse group of folks, including a lot of consulting class, a lot of engineers, a lot of finance people, to give them the same overview of the solicitation that we've given to other members of the public, essentially just expanding on the one-pagers that we've already put out, the information that's already available on our website. I think that was a very successful trip. We had a lot of interest, a lot of folks who very much understood what we were trying to accomplish through this, and I think now have us on their radar for November to see what the board ultimately decides to do. We've also had the opportunity to talk to some non-traditional media that we're not typically in front of. So that includes Proximo, which is a publication out of the UK, as well as P3 Journal, which is also out of the UK. There was an article published in Proximo on October 18th, and P3 just sent me the advance of theirs, which I'm hoping will be out by the end of this week as well. So trying to get the word out there to the places that it really needs to be. I also mentioned the website, but I want to give a special shout out to that, especially to Garrett for setting that up for us. We have a dedicated landing page just for the Long-Term Water Augmentation Fund, WTLAF.azwifa.gov. I can also put that on the screen so you can actually see it, but everything that is currently available to the public regarding the solicitation, regarding the Long-Term Water Augmentation Fund is available on that site. We will continue to update that so that it is a complete one-stop shop. So once the solicitation is live, if that does happen on November 20th, that is where that will be located. It'll all be there within just a couple of clicks. And so we're trying to keep all of the information very tight, very easily accessible to make sure that everyone who needs to know does know. With that, happy to answer any questions about the outreach and plans that we have going into November.
Thank you, Chelsea. Are there any questions from committee members for Chelsea? Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5, call to the public. Do we have, this is time for additional public comment on any agenda item? Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Have we received any requests for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have. We have Brian Hageman from Deluge Technologies has submitted a request to speak. Brian, I have enabled your mic. You'll have to unmute yourself, but once you do, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Chairman Cook and committee. I'd like to suggest that the committee hold a meeting 1 week after the November 20th board meeting. And in that agenda, have an open forum to allow proposal writers to ask questions and receive answers from the committee and staff. The proposal writers will benefit from this Q&A from other proposal writers. And I think it would benefit everybody to have an open forum after the November 20th board meeting. 1 week after November 20th would be November 27th. That's the day before Thanksgiving. So that might not work. But the next Wednesday, December 4th, is open, and hopefully you guys can schedule a meeting on that date. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So for the committee's benefit, I think what Mr. Hageman's talking about is commonly seen in these kind of things as a pre-offer conference. It's something that we certainly will publish, and I think that's fairly standard practice for things like this. So check our website for any information on that kind of thing.
Moving on to agenda item number 6, agenda development. This is the opportunity for members to identify any topics they would like to be placed on an agenda at a future meeting. Seeing as how we've just finished up this rather lengthy and difficult thing, I'm happy to give you all some time to think about what are we going to do next. So.
Well, I can chime in on that, and agenda item number 7. So certainly with the vote today, huge first step, but where committee's not done. There's certainly what is in the governance of this process, roles that we've contemplated for the long-term water augmentation committee in terms of executing the solicitation. As we move into phase 2, working on the individual task orders with the successful awardees out of the solicitation, and then working on the process. We've talked about a parallel process of working with customers and off-takers. And so I think there's certainly a role for the long-term water augmentation committee. We don't have any future meetings scheduled, but we certainly have a number of future concepts and things to work with the committee on. So look for that after a little rest.
Moving on to agenda item number 8, adjournment. If there's nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting of the WIFA Long-Term Water Augmentation Committee. The time is now 1:49 p.m. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.